Okay, we'll start with this. An interesting post from newly crowned undisputed super lightweight champion Chantel Cameron, who took to her social media and stated, "Enjoyed my 2 weeks of downtime, but I'm ready to get back to planning my next move with my team. I want the rematch with McCaskill at 147 pounds for all of her belts this time. Who would you all like to see me fight next?" And it's a strange request. To say the least, because the conditions...
The McCaskill people were adamant that Jessica's belts not be on the line in the Cameron fight, that it only be for the belts at 140, because they wanted to ensure that Jessica would have those belts to return to.
She'd still be able to hang on to those belts if things go sideways at 140. She'd still be a reigning champion at 147. And now that she's lost that fight, and the outcome is decided, I don't think she'd be too keen on facing Chantel again at 147 for her belt.
Would she? I don't know.
From a business perspective, it makes absolutely no sense for Jessica to gamble what she still has against the fighter that just beat her, in one-sided fashion.
And what's in it for Chantel? Why does Chantel want to fight Jessica again? She dominated her.
Well, for Chantel Cameron, what's in it for her? It's the chance to become a 2-division champion now that she's undisputed at super lightweight.
Maybe she's thinking she should move up, though I'm not sure that's the best idea, the best strategy, because if she moves up to 147, she will in effect be distancing herself from Katie Taylor, who's downstairs at 135.
And I guess Chantel feels she might not get that fight, so why not move up in weight? Why not offer Jessica the chance to run it back for her belts this time? Maybe that's what she figures. Maybe that's what she thinks. And these comments from Chantel are coming to us on the heels of an order from the WBO for Chantel Cameron to face her mandatory challenger by way of the WBO, Christina Lenardatu.
2-time super lightweight WBO champion Christina Lenardatu, who she didn't actually lose her WBO title in the ring, at least not the last time she didn't. She was with child, and she vacated it.
The first time she lost it to Katie, she dropped a decision. But the second time, after procuring the WBO title for the second time, Christina didn't lose it in the ring. She was with child, so she vacated it.
Spent some time away from the ring, has since returned to action, had a fight in the last 12 months, and now she's ready to challenge for that alphabet title.
The WBO has made her Chantel Cameron's mandatory challenger.
That order came down a little over a week ago.
And it seems that Chantel Cameron has other plans. She's insistent that her and Jessica, they run it back, but at welterweight for Jessica's titles this time.
It's the strangest thing when it comes to Chantel and Jessica's last fight. Jessica might have been the one that lost, but Jessica's the one with no shortage of options.
Think about it. Chantel Cameron wants to move up and fight her. Natasha Jonah, she wants to move down from junior middleweight down to welterweight, fight with Jessica McCaskill.
So Chantel Cameron wants to fight her again. Natasha wants to fight her. I'd wager that Terry Harpier,
newly crowned WBA junior middleweight champion Terry Harpier, I'd wager Terry likely wants to fight Jessica as well. I think Mary McGee would too.
Yeah, that's Jessica McCaskill's arch nemesis, her longtime rival from Gary, Indiana, former IBF super lightweight champion Mary McGee.
Pretty sure if given the chance, she'd love to share the ring with Jessica as well to settle their longtime rivalry, settle their differences. It's the funniest thing, but in spite of Jessica McCaskill losing her last fight, she seems to have more options than Chantel.
Well, let's get down to brass tacks. Do I, as a consumer, do I, as a boxing fan, want to see Jessica and Chantel run it back?
No, based on how the fight played out. No, because the fight was one-sided.
If I had to choose between a McCaskill rematch and a Lenardatu title defense, what do I want to see? I'd rather see a Lenardatu title defense.
More interesting fight for my money. We've already seen the McCaskill fight. The second fight wouldn't go any differently.
That fight is ordered, you understand. If Chantel Cameron don't comply with that order, the WBO title is forfeit.
And her status as an undisputed champion will have been short-lived, as it will have been rescinded. That as soon as she won those titles, that's as soon as the WBO ordered her to fight Christina. If she vacates, well, there goes undisputed.
It's a very sordid affair between 140 and 147 pounds.
It really is, though, for my money. if I had to choose Chantel Cameron's next fight, Chantel Cameron, one of my favorite fighters, if I had to choose who she shares the ring with next, it would be Christina Leonardatu. If it's between Jessica and Christina, then I'd go with Christina.
Out of those two options, the Leonardatu fight.
That's the fight that I'd want to see. Don't know if we're actually going to get it, but all we can do is wait. Men's welterweight news, per tweet from Mike Kopinger, the WBA on Friday ordered a fight between its secondary welterweight title holder, Eimantas Stanionis, and Virgil Ortiz, sources tell ESPN. If no deal is struck in 30 days, a purse bid will be ordered with Stanionis on a 75 split. Fantastic fight if it happens.
What that essentially means is that if these guys don't reach amicable terms, if they don't reach a deal within the 30-day grace period, it's going to go to a purse bid. And if it does,
there's not much chance this fight happens in a purse bid situation, as Golden Boy Promotions would not go through with a fight where their fighter only stands to make 25%.
This is not dissimilar from what we saw with the Leo Santa Cruz and Lee Wood situation. It was the same split.
An unfavorable split for the challenger, Lee Wood, as he would stand to make more money fighting someone else in his own neck of the woods than challenging Leo Santa Cruz for just 25% of the price, 25% of the pot.
That's the way this breaks down. It's up to Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions to make Eimantas Stanionis a sweet deal and incentivized offer in order to ensure that the fight takes place, that the fight happens, as the winner of the fight would become the mandatory challenger to the title held by Errol Spence Jr.
It's important to note that Eimantas Stanionis was already the mandatory challenger to the WBA title before Errol Spence Jr. even won it. It was late last year that an order from the WBA came down ordering then-champion Yordenis Ugas to take on Eimantas Stanionis as his mandatory challenger, and they convinced him to step aside in order to allow Ugas and Spence to unify on the premise that Stanionis would get the winner.
A full year later, a full year since that order initially came down, Stanionis still hasn't gotten his title shot.
That order initially came down in October of last year. Here in November of this year, Eimantas Stanionis still hasn't gotten his title shot, and he's not about to, as widespread rumors indicate that Errol Spence Jr., the current reigning WBA champion, he's going to be defending his title against his WBC mandatory challenger, Keith Thurman.
Not Eimantas Stanionis, even though Eimantas Stanionis was already the WBA's mandatory challenger long before Keith Thurman became the WBC's mandatory challenger.
Bit of a raw deal for Eimantas Stanionis, wouldn't you say?
I mean, listen, I'm a boxing fan. I love the idea of Stanionis versus Virgil Ortiz, a battle of the unbeatens, two of the better welterweights in today's welterweight division. I love the fight.
From a consumer perspective, it's a great fight. But from the Eimantas Stanionis perspective and from his team's perspective, is it a great fight? Is it great for them? Gambling their world title shot, their world title opportunity against a blue chip prospect, a dangerous fighter, a high-risk, low-reward guy like Virgil Ortiz?
I don't know. Maybe Eimantas Stanionis as a fighter wants this fight, but do his handlers want this for him?
You have to wonder. A split like that, 75% of the pot in favor of Eimantas Stanionis, that's a bit unattractive, a bit unappealing for Virgil Ortiz. Should they fail to reach a deal and this fight goes to a purse bid, that's the assigned split. It's on Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions here and now in the 30-day grace period. It's on them to make Eimantas Stanionis a sweet enough deal that he agrees to terms in order to avoid a purse bid and in order to avoid that lopsided split.
It's on them to do it.
What if Eimantas Stanionis' people, they don't actually want this fight? They start driving a hard bargain. They reject whatever they're offered because they know if this thing goes to a purse bid, we get 75% of the pot.
Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy are never going to make a fight under those circumstances, and in that situation, they might walk away, and we get that monkey off our back.
That's if the Stanionis people don't want this fight. If they do want this fight, well,
we'll see how much they do or don't want this fight. Time will tell. time will tell the story.
I mean, I love the fight myself. I'd rather the fight happen, but I can see an angle where maybe the Stanionis people, they're not too crazy about this situation.
Stanionis himself, by way of his social media, has been dropping hints.
Fight of the year pending.
Really?
It's a crying shame that after the performance that he put on against Radzav Butaev, he didn't see any action. He didn't see any action for the rest of the year. It's a crying shame because Stanionis is one of the more solid welterweights in today's welterweight division, and he's flying largely under the radar.
Fan-friendly fighter, fan-friendly style, young unbeaten guy.
He can box a bit, he can punch a bit. They've already delayed his title shot.
Latest title shot? They screwed him out of his title shot.
There's been a rumor circulating the last couple of days that Errol was going to fight Stanionis, not Keith Thurman. But this order from the WBA effectively kills that rumor.
This order from the WBA, the WBC's order from over a week ago killed that rumor. They ordered him to fight Keith Thurman.
Here we have this order by way of their sister organization, the WBA. They're ordering Stanionis to fight Virgil Ortiz, not Errol Spence Jr. So all of that effectively kills that rumor. Because if Stanionis is being ordered to fight...
If Stanionis is fighting Virgil Ortiz, he's not fighting Errol Spence Jr.
I don't know where exactly that rumor came from. It feels like something the Spence fans might have started up to take the heat off of Errol for potentially fighting a guy that he said he'd never fight. That guy being Keith Thurman.
They got to saying he was going to fight Stanionis instead because they know that makes Errol a hypocrite.
Seems that rumor never really took off, never really got off the ground. It's looking more and more like Errol's gonna fight Keith, and let's see if we can't get Stanionis versus Ortiz, because I very much like that fight.
Hopefully they get a deal done.
And finally, in men's super middleweight and light heavyweight news, Canelo Alvarez plans a May tune-up fight, a May return, and Dmitry Bivol rematch in September.
There's a lot of time between now and September of next year.
Canelo Alvarez is coming off of successful wrist surgery, and he told ESPN Deportes' Salvador Rodriguez that he plans to return in May with a tune-up sort of fight, and then he wants to rematch Dmitry Bivol in September of 2023, considering Bivol not an option for May.
Not off wrist surgery, he ain't. He's got to be 100% for a Dmitry Bivol rematch, and even 100% may not be enough.
I'm just giving it to you straight. It's the only way I know how to give it to you. And if Canelo Alvarez indefinitely plans to return in May in a tune-up kind of fight, if he's not fighting Dmitry Bivol, that leaves the door open for Dmitry to pursue the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard, set to go down early next year.
Because I hardly think that Dmitry Bivol is going to sit on his hands from now until all the way into September, 9 months into next year.
No, I don't think he's going to do that. He's going to need someone to fight. And ideally, he would be fighting the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard for the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world. It really does feel like it's now or never. On the heels of news by way of the WBC that the winner of that fight must satisfy Callum Smith as their mandatory challenger.
We all know how this works. The only way you can get around a mandatory is with a unification match, in this instance, an undisputed title fight. I happen to think if everybody's on board and everybody's working together, they can circumvent that Callum Smith fight for the undisputed title fight between Dmitry and the winner of Yard versus Beterbiev.
The winner that most people expect is going to be Artur Beterbiev. Lest we forget, Anthony Yard was stopped by a past-it Sergey Kovalev 2 or 3 years ago. If a well-past-it Sergey Kovalev can stop you, Artur Beterbiev might be able to do a little more than that.
I think Anthony Yard can last a little longer than Joe Smith Jr. did, former WBO light heavyweight champion Joe Smith Jr. His fight with Artur, it only lasted 2 rounds.
Joe, he's a big, durable guy, takes a great punch, but I think the fight only lasted 2 rounds because he basically charged Artur Beterbiev. He walked into the fire, stepped into the kill box, and paid for it. I don't think Anthony Yarde will have that same approach. I think he'll take a more measured approach with Artur.
Thus, his fight with Artur might last a little bit longer, though all the same, I have Artur winning the fight, like most of you may have Artur winning the fight.
And if he does, Artur's getting up there in age. He's getting long in the tooth. In this advanced age, at this advanced stage in his career, nothing else makes sense for Artur but that Dmitry Bivol fight.
Let's just be honest with each other here. Artur's a great fighter to watch. Pure entertainment. One of the most destructive punchers in the sport today. But at this stage, you're not going to turn this 38-year-old fighter, 38-year-old fighter, into a big-ticket seller.
The biggest and best fight for Artur beyond the Yarde fight really is the Bivol fight.
And it's up to Top Rank and Artur Beterbiev's handlers to prioritize that fight over the Smith fight, because if you don't fight Dmitry Bivol, here comes Callum Smith, here comes Matchroom.
I understand that both Dmitry and Callum are in bed with Matchroom, but I'm of the opinion that if the only way to get the Bivol versus Beterbiev fight done, if the only way to do that is for Matchroom to send Dmitry over to Top Rank, I think they're willing to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe they're willing to send Callum Smith over there. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, and they'll push for a purse bid so that they can host the Artur Beterbiev versus Callum Smith fight.
Yeah, maybe.
But amidst all these hypothetical scenarios, variations of them, what's best for Artur, what's better for the fighter, is to put him in that undisputed title fight, whether it's on ESPN or DAZN. Regardless of how you get it done, you need to get it done, because this guy ain't getting any younger.
Hard to imagine that Bob Arum would negotiate that undisputed title fight devoid of a long-term deal, a long-term contract with Dmitry, that should Dmitry emerge the winner,
Bob don't get hung out to dry.
Think about how the first Devin Haney versus George Kambosos fight was negotiated. That wasn't a one-off deal. That was a multi-fight deal.
I don't know. Maybe for Dmitry to get Artur in the ring, maybe he has to enter into a multi-fight deal with Top Rank.
I don't know that he can do that. Devin was a network and promotional free agent when he entered into that agreement. Is Dmitry?
In any event, that fight needs to happen. It needs to happen for Dmitry. It needs to happen for Artur. Whether Dmitry's got to go to ESPN or Artur's got to go to DAZN, any way you slice it, it needs to happen.
For Artur Beterbiev especially, because he's not getting any younger.